We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. This is Abe, your host. It is 5:45 a.m., November 6th. Just got off work. It's freezing outside. Pretty chill night, though. Wasn't too bad. Just stayed steady the whole time, so I always enjoy that. I don't like it to be dead. It makes the hours drag by. As far as any other update, that's about it. Just work, eat, and sleep. Today we are covering the final chapter in the Madeleine Smith murder. It is the trial section, so we shall get on with the show. Madeleine was charged with 2 attempts at poisoning Emile L'Anglais and was taken to Glasgow's North Prison to await trial. With Mimi's safely out of the way, the fiscal's officers searched her room at Blithwood Square. They found Emile's likeness on a daguerreotype plate, which together with various letters, papers, and bottles they took away. Madeleine's letters were read, a task which took 10 days, and a bevy of clerks made copies of them. On April 6, Dr. Penny reported the results of his analysis. The contents of Emile's stomach contained 82 grains of arsenic, enough to kill 40 men. While the fiscal's men labored through her letters and interviewed over 50 apothecaries, while Glasgow seethed with scandalized gossip and her family experienced the torment of shame, Madeleine waited seemingly unconcerned in prison. A week before her appearance in court, she was transferred to Edinburgh prison, where she immediately established rapport with the matron, Miss Aitken. On June 30th, 1857, she appeared at the High Court of Justiciary in Edinburgh, with her trial, which was literally a 9-day wonder. Both Edinburgh and Glasgow were agog with excitement, and crowds had gathered early to fight for the limited number of seats available in the public gallery. Madeleine also arrived early by cab and was whisked through the side entrance to the cells below the court. At 10:30 a.m., the judges took their places. The Lord Justice Clerk, Lord Hope, imposing in a scarlet robe and hood, followed by Lords Ivory and Handyside. The small courtroom was crammed to the capacity with officials, lawyers, leaders of business, and clergy, reporters representing 27 newspapers, and as many other interested parties as could be squeezed into the narrow confines. The signal was given for the accused to be brought up, and she emerged, accompanied by the prison matron and a top-hatted policeman. Her appearance brought an audible stir from the court. She looked serene, radiant, and beautiful, with a slight smile playing on her lips. She mesmerized many of those present and created an aura of innocence. Madeleine was charged with administering arsenic or other poison on 2 separate occasions in February 1857 to Emile L'Anglais, with intent to murder him, and in March murdering him by means of poison. The panel, as Scottish courts referred to accused persons, pleaded not guilty in a clear voice. The jury of 15 men heard 57 witnesses for the prosecution and 31 for the accused. 214 documents, letters, and exhibits were cited in the proceedings, which lasted for 9 days. Prosecution was led by the Lord Advocate James Moncrieff, and Madeleine's defender was the Dean of Faculty, John Inglis. Both men were in their mid-40s and destined for distinguished careers, but in the manner of the Scottish courts, neither was required to make an opening speech. The proceedings of the trial began with the evidence of the sheriff's substitute, before whom Madeleine had, quote, emitted a declaration, unquote. Then Mrs. Jenkins gave her account of Emil's illness, and the story of events leading up to his death was unfolded by the doctors, his workmates, and Miss Perry. Dr. Penny told the court that evidence of arsenic in a considerable quantity was unequivocally detected. In the dead man's stomach, he thought that cocoa or coffee might be a vehicle in which a large dose of arsenic could be given, although he added, "I think a person drinking such poisonous chocolate would suspect something when the gritty particles came into the mouth." Auguste Desmines gave his dead friend a good character reference, but mentioned one or two traits which were helpful to the defense. Emile was an excitable person and was in the habit of taking drugs. I know that when L'Anglais came to my house, he always had a bottle of laudanum in his bag, but I don't know if he used it. I once heard him speak of arsenic. Its purport was how much arsenic a person could take without being injured by it. On the question of Madeleine's purchases of arsenic, Mr. Smith's gardener testified that they were very much troubled by rats at Rowlin, but he had never been given arsenic to kill them by Miss Smith. One of Madeleine's school friends said that they read a magazine article which described the arsenic eating of Styrian peasants and the use of arsenic by women to improve their complexion. Poor William Minnock was called to give evidence. He stumbled into the witness box with averted gaze and mumbled acknowledgment of his betrothal to the accused. With Madeleine's eyes boring into him, he denied any knowledge of her attachment or peculiar intimacy with any other man. Poor dude didn't even know. Getting cucked. Christina Haggart, the go-between, spelled out the details of her mistress's intrigue. L'Anglais called at the house, usually very late, when the family was asleep, and sometimes visited more than once a night. Climax of the prosecution's case came on the 5th day, when the Lord Advocate asked the clerk of the court to read out Madeleine's letters. It was at this moment, with the rumored sexual nature of the correspondence for which the public had been waiting. Of course they would. Bunch of pervs. The accused remained calm throughout this ordeal, although she occasionally put a hand to her face. For the most part, she looked the clerk of the court squarely in the eye, so that his composure was as much on trial as her own. While there was sufficient spicy material to shock most Victorians, there may have been a disappointment in some quarters. The Lord Advocate had ordered the more indelicate passages to be omitted. The letters and reactions to them were reported with traditional righteousness in the newspaper covering the trial. The Durham Advertiser, whose reporter gloried in having seen the admissions, told its readers, "I pray God I may never see such again." Ugh! Before the defense, evidence begun on the 6th day in an attempt to introduce Emil's memorandum book, which was ruled as inadmissible on a 2-to-1 decision by the judges. The task confronting the dean of faculty was thus made a little easier. Witnesses were called who had known and worked with Emile, and a picture was built up of a rather unstable personality of a man who cried in bed and threatened suicide on a number of occasions. One witness said that the dead man had once confided to him that he was in the habit of taking arsenic. The use of arsenic as a cosmetic was discussed at some length, and the defense on this point was strengthened. No arsenic was found in Madeleine's room when the police made their search, which was curious, since she had bought 2 ounces in March. The only member of the Smith family to give evidence was Janet, age 13. She told the court that not only did she sleep in the same room as her sister, but also in the same bed. On Sunday, March 22nd, she and Madeleine settled down for a night at 10:30 p.m. She had often seen her sister drink cocoa, but had never seen her make it in her bedroom. The 7th day of the trial was entirely taken up by the Lord Advocate, summarizing the prosecution case. He spoke of L'Anglier's good character and dismissed any notion of suicide. He argued that the accused had got herself into a situation where murdering L'Anglier seemed to be the only avenue open to her. The circumstantial evidence suggested strongly that Emile did visit her, and that she gave him a cocoa drink laced with arsenic. In short, Madeleine fulfilled the classic requirements of motive, method, and opportunity. The Lord Advocate addressed the jury. "And now, gentlemen, as I have said, I leave the case in your hands. I see no outlet for this unhappy prisoner. And if you come to the same result as I have done, there is but one course open to you, and that is to return a verdict of guilt on this charge." The prosecutor's speech was fair and objective. He had not sought to pillory the young woman in the dock, but in the truth he offered only circumstantial evidence. By the way, right there, the whole pillory, I actually did a episode on torture devices. Well, actually multiple episodes. It was a whole series. We covered the pillory and multiple accounts of people who suffered from it. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll leave a link in the credits and you can click on it during the credits. But yeah, if you're listening on audio only, check that out. It's in the library. So at 10 a.m. on the following day, the dean of faculty rose to address a memorable speech to the jury. The words "with power to save a life" in the court of law are always heard with silent awe. John Inglis had chosen his words for that day with the care of the persuasive orator. "You are invited," he said to the jury, and encouraged by the prosecutor to snap the thread of that young life and to consign to an ignoramus death on the scaffold one who, within a few short months, was known only as a gentle and confiding and affectionate girl, the ornament and pride of her happy home. He went on, "If heaven grant me patience and strength for the task, I shall tear to tatters that web of sophistry in which the prosecutor has striven to involve this poor girl." First, L'Anglier's character came under attack. A man quoted, narrowly vain, conceited, pretentious, with a very great opinion on his own personal attractions, and a very silly expectation of admiration from the other sex. He threatened, whether he intended or not, to commit suicide in consequence of his disappointment. He was not a person of strong health. Next he turned to, quote, "the corrupting influence of the seducer. How vile the arts to which he resorted for accomplishing his nefarious purpose can never be proved so well as by the altered tone and language of the unhappy prisoner's letters. She had not lost her virtue merely, but her sense of decency. Gentlemen, whose fault was that? Whose doing was that? Think you that without temptation, without evil teaching, a poor girl falls into such depths of degradation? No. Influence from without, most corrupting influence, can alone account for such a fall. This was an impressive attempt to diminish the impact of the letters, which he later described as, quote, this frightful correspondence, through which there breathes a spirit of devoted affection towards the man who had destroyed her, which was the most touching. The dean of faculty thus began to turn the tide, restoring the prisoner to the role of reluctant virgin and L'Angelier to the part of a rapacious seducer. John Inglis was able to denounce the two charges of attempted murder as simply lacking in supportive evidence. But the remaining charge of committing murder on March 22nd he treated almost with disdain. He admitted that the prisoner had both bought arsenic and written urgently to summon her lover, but he said, think, gentlemen, how foul and unnatural a murder it is, the murder of one who within a very short space of time was the object of her love, an unworthy object, an unholy love, but yet while it lasted, and its endurance was very brief, it was a deep, absorbing, unselfish, devoted passion. And the object of that passion she now conceives the purpose of murdering. The dean of faculty was quite simply discrediting the charge on the grounds that the young girl in the dock, observably feminine, well brought up, and well behaved, could not have done it. But in addition to rhetoric, he also used logic. Why, he asked, should it be supposed that when she had written twice to L'Angelier without reply, the accused would be ready and waiting for him with arsenic on the Sunday night? He referred to Janet Smith's evidence, which gave every indication of a perfectly normal, uninterrupted night for the whole household. Moreover, the quantity of the arsenic which the dead man ingested was so large that he must have been aware of the taste and the gritty feeling of the powder in his mouth. The jury were reminded that, whether he met his death by suicide, or whether he met his death by accident, or in what way soever he met his death, the question for you is the murder proved? You are not bound to account for his death. You are not in the least degree bound to account for his death. The question you have got to try is whether the poison was administered by the hands of the prisoner. Madeleine's defender now began to wind himself up for his final onslaught. He charged L'Angelier with encouraging the accused to write letters to him with the intention of using them for blackmail. Quote, he not only preserves them, he retains them as an engine of power and oppression in his hands. He keeps them that he may carry out his cold-blooded original design, not merely possessing himself of her person, but of raising himself in the social scale by a marriage with her. He will expose her to her friends and to the world. He will drive her to destruction or to suicide itself, rather than let her out of his power. It was a return to the earlier play of attacking and assaults on the girl's innocence. With trembling voice, the dean of faculty read out Madeleine's letter in which she begged Emile not to expose her to her father. Quote, is that the state of mind of a murderess? He demanded. Or can anyone affect that frame of mind? Will you for one moment listen to this suggestion that the letter covers a piece of deceit? No. The finest actress that ever lived could not have written that letter unless she had felt it. He pressed on with the impassioned oratory in a speech that he had already lasted over 4 hours. Quote, to determine guilt or innocence by the light of an intellect alone is the exclusive prerogative of infallibility, he declared, and when a man's presumptuous arrogance tempts him to usurp the attribute of omniscience, He only exposes the weakness and frailty of his own nature. May the Spirit of truth guide you to an honest, a just, and a true verdict. But no verdict will be honest, or just, or true, unless it once satisfies the reasonable scruples of the severest judgment, and yet leaves undisturbed and unvexed the tenderest conscience among you. This was a powerful conclusion to a brilliant speech. Madeleine must have felt well served. As John Inglis resumed his seat, spontaneous applause greeted his efforts. The Ayrshire Express reported that Madeleine was the only unmoved, cool personage to be seen in court. Quote, "From the first moment to the last, she has preserved that undaunted, defiant attitude of perfect repose, which has struck every spectator with astonishment. But the last moment, the last word, had yet to come. Within 15 minutes of the Dean of Faculty completing his speech, the Lord Justice Clerk began his summing up. He was quick to stamp on feelings of sympathy for the prisoner, which he had been swelling around the court. Gentlemen of the jury," he began, "the contest of evidence and of argument is now closed, and the time has now come for deliberation and decision." He reminded them that they were not to be swayed by the speeches of counsel, but must judge the prisoner's guilt on innocence from the evidence. The judge upheld the value of circumstantial evidence, especially in poison cases. Quote, "You must be satisfied that the accused had the poison in her possession, and that it was given and administered upon that particular occasion, and in the circumstances set forth in the indictment." Speaking in a hoarse voice, he advised the jury that the accused should be found not guilty on the first charge, and went on to review the evidence at length. He did not believe that L'Angelier was the type to commit suicide, and he suggested that Madeleine's flight to Roe was not to escape, but to ensure that the gardener at Rouen supported her story about the need to kill the rats with arsenic. The judge reserved his most severe remarks for Madeleine's letters, which he said exhibited, quote, such a degree of ill-regulated, disorderly, distempered, licentious feelings as to show that this person quite capable of cherishing any object to avoid disgrace and exposure, and of taking any revenge which such treatment might excite in the mind of a woman driven nearly to madness as she says she was. He went on to say, on May 7th she writes to him, and in that, is there the slightest appearance of grief or remorse? None whatever. It is the letter of a girl rejoicing in what had passed and alluding to it. In one passage in particular, in terms which I will not read, for perhaps they were never previously committed to paper, as having passed between a man and a woman. In other letters she uses the word love, underscored, showing clearly what she meant by it. And in one letter she alludes to a most disgusting, revolting scene between them, which one would have thought only a common prostitute could have been party to, and exhibiting a state of mind most lamentable to think of. The Lord Justice Clerk concluded, whatever may be your suspicion, however heavy the weight and load of suspicion is against her, and however you may have to struggle to get rid of it, you perform the best and bounden duty as a jury to separate suspicion from truth and to proceed upon nothing that you do not find established against her. You have done your duty under your oaths, under God, and to your country. You may feel satisfied that remorse you never can have. The jury retired soon after 1 p.m. on the 9th day of the trial. 25 minutes later, a bell rang to announce their return. The foreman, reading from a piece of paper, announced the verdict. The jury find the panel not guilty on the first charge in the indictment by a majority. On the second charge, not proven. By a majority, find the third charge also not proven. Madeleine permitted herself a smile as loud applause and wild cheering broke out into the court. This was echoed by a huge crowd standing outside in Parliament Square as the dams of tension broke to release the floods of popular feeling. Madeleine was hugged, kissed, and congratulated by everyone who could get close to her. The only figures in court standing back from these scenes of jubilation were, of course, the judges, but also the dean of faculty, who remained seated with head in hands. Madeleine looked back with a smile at her defender as she left the court, but he did not look up. The verdict of not proven is singular to the Scots law. Its effect is to allow the accused to go free without fear of punishment or retrial. In practice, it is considered by many to be an unsatisfactory compromise, and in popular quarters may be regarded as simply getting away with murder. The Glasgow Herald remarked that for Madeleine Smith, her conscience was now her only tormentor. Her brother Jack was the only member of the family at the court after the verdict was given. He accompanied her to Rowlin, where her parents gave her a muted welcome. One of Madeleine's first actions was to write to Miss Aitken, the matron of Edinburgh Prison. Dear Miss Aitken, you shall be glad to hear that I am well. In fact, I am quite well, and my spirits not in the least down. I did not feel in the least put about when the jury were out considering whether they should send me home or keep me. My friend, I know nothing of. I have not seen him. I hear he has been ill, which I don't much care. The country is looking most lovely. Thus was William Minnock dismissed from her life. She was certainly not the least cowed by her experience. She criticized the jury for failing to find her not guilty, and described the judge as a tedious old man. She had shed no tears of pity for herself or her dead lover, nor even tears of gratitude for John Inglis, who had wrought her triumph in court. Her family was broken by the affair. Rowlin was sold, and Mr. Smith died 5 years after the trial, to be followed quickly by his wife. It is an interesting afterthought that if Mr. Smith had read more serious into Auguste Demean's offer to retrieve his daughter's letters, perhaps by taking immediate action himself, charges might never have been brought. Madeleine moved to London, and thence to Plymouth, where she married a teacher named George Wardle in 1861. The couple moved to London, where they had 2 children and became involved in artistic circles. Their marriage ended in separation, and following various moves, she decided to live in America. Wardle died in 1910, and Madeleine married a man named Sheehy in New York. He died in 1926, leaving Madeleine ill-provided for financially. In April 1928, 71 years after Emile had succumbed to poison, the woman who had wanted to be Mimi L'Anglière died, aged 93 years old, as Lena Sheehy. So there you have it, folks. There is the final outcome of Madeleine Smith. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys think she was guilty? Do you guys think she was innocent? I personally think she was guilty. But, and from the sounds of it, doesn't even really sound like she even cared, about any of it. She didn't give thanks to her lawyer. She immediately dumped Minnock. Didn't really shed a tear for her dead lover. Just kind of smiled, walked out the door, and all right, everything's done. I'm off. I think it's crazy she lived up to 93 years old, especially back in the day in that time period. I mean, to me, they say our life expectancy is like we live longer, but I don't know what they say, like the good people die early and the wicked people, live forever. And I don't know, I think there's something to that, Some of the most wicked people, I feel like, get to live forever, and then some of the awesome, beautiful souls just kind of die off quickly. But let me know in the comments what you guys thought, and we will do more true crime series. Got tons of episodes planned. I've always got 3 or 4 episodes planned each time I do one. So you all have a good day, and I'll catch you later.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.